Hey everyone, and welcome. Every single time you shoot off an email or stream your favorite show, there's this invisible battle happening to keep your data safe. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the strategies in that battle. We're talking about the encryption modes that are the unsung heroes of our digital lives. So let's dive right in. Okay, so here's what we've got on tap. First, we're going to tackle the big, fundamental problem of keeping data secret. Then, things get interesting. We'll meet 3 different scribes, each with their own clever strategy for encryption. We'll compare them, see what makes them tick, and then we'll bring in the villain of our story, the Codebreaker. And of course, we'll wrap it all up with the most important takeaways you need to know.
All right, let's kick things off with our first section, the secret language of data. This whole thing starts with a problem that's as old as time itself. How do you send a message that only the right person can read? But here's the twist for us today. Our messages, which we call plain text, aren't just little notes passed in class. Nope, they're huge, massive streams of digital data. And our job is to take that plain text and turn it into complete, unreadable gibberish, or what we call ciphertext.
And that really gets us to the heart of the matter. Think about our modern encryption tools. We call them block ciphers. Imagine they're like the world's strongest, most unbreakable padlock. Sounds great, right? Well, here's the catch. That super strong padlock can only lock up a tiny little box of data at a time. So the big question is, how on earth do you use that one tiny powerful lock to secure a message that's like a giant endless scroll?
Well, the answer is something called a mode of operation. And this is super important. It's not the lock itself. It's the strategy for how you use the lock. So if that block cipher is our unbreakable lockbox, the mode of operation is the master plan. It's the system that tells us exactly how to chop up that massive scroll of data into smaller pieces and securely pack each one into its own lockbox, one after another.
Okay, on to section 2. Now, to really get a feel for these different strategies, we're going to use a cool analogy. Let's imagine we have 3 ancient scribes. Each one has a totally different way of writing secret messages. So, let's meet our scribes and see how they work. So first up, we have the simple scribe. This guy represents a mode called Electronic Codebook, or ECB for short. And his method is, well, it's simple. He's got a codebook. Every time he sees the word attack, he just looks it up and replaces it with the exact same code. Let's say it's $Z, every single time. It's just a direct one-for-one swap.
And right here, this is the huge, glaring problem. Because it's just a simple substitution, the patterns in the original message are still there in the encrypted one. So if the word attack shows up 3 times in your message, the code X#Z is going to show up 3 times in the secret version. A spy looking at this might not know what X#Z means, but they can see it's repeating. And just knowing that something is repeating leaks a ton of information. It's a dead giveaway.
So, the verdict on this one? It's a big, fat no. ECB is totally insecure. Why? Because it fails at the most important job of encryption, hiding patterns. That's why you basically never, ever want to use it in any modern system. Sure, it's simple, but that simplicity is exactly what makes it so unsafe.
Okay, so to fix that massive weakness in ECB, we need a much smarter scribe. And that brings us to our second method, the chain of secrets. This is known as cipher block chaining, or CBC. Now, instead of just one scribe working alone, I want you to picture a whole line of them. And here's the clever part. What each scribe does is directly linked to what the scribe right before them did. Let's walk through how this works. First, we start with something random. It's called an initialization vector, or IV for short. We take that random bit and mix it in with our very first chunk of data. Okay, step 2, that mixed up chunk gets encrypted. Now here comes the magic. That new piece of encrypted text is then used to scramble the next chunk of our original message before we encrypt it. And that process just keeps on going, creating this strong interconnected chain where every link depends on the one before it.
And the result? It's pretty brilliant, actually. This whole chaining thing completely obliterates the pattern problem we saw with the ECB. Now, if you have 2 identical chunks of data, they will come out looking completely different after they're encrypted. But there's always a but, right? The trade-off here is speed. Because it's a chain, it has to be done in order. You can't start on block number 2 until you're completely finished with block number 1.
So that begs the question, what if you need that rock-solid security of CBC, but you also need to go fast? Well, that brings us to our third and final scribe, the synchronized scribe. This is counter mode, or CTR. And with this one, forget about a single file line. Here,
you've got a whole team of scribes, and they're all working at the exact same time, in parallel.
Let me show you how CTR works. So first, for every chunk of data we have, we create a unique number for it, kind of like a page number or a serial number. Then, we take that number and we encrypt it. This creates a special, one-time use keypad that's unique to that chunk of data. Next, we take our original data and we mix it with its unique keypad. And here's the real game changer. Because none of this depends on the block before it, we can do all of this for every single block at the exact same time. It's super efficient.
So what's the final word on CTR? It's fantastic. You get the best of both worlds, really strong security plus high-octane performance. It does just as good a job hiding patterns as CBC does, but because you can do everything at once, it's way, way faster. That combination of security and speed makes it a go-to choice for a lot of modern technology.
Okay, so we've met our 3 scribes, right? The simple one, the chained one, and the synchronized team. Now it's time for the main event, the side-by-side showdown. This is where we put it all together, so you can see exactly why you'd pick one over the others.
This chart really breaks it down for us. Let's start at the top with ECB. See? Its main feature is that the blocks are independent. But the big takeaway, the strategic implication, is that it's just not sound. It leaks patterns. Bad news. Now let's look at CBC. It's sequential, which makes it strong, but slow. And check out that error propagation column. This is interesting. If there's one tiny error in the ciphertext, it actually messes up 2 blocks when you decrypt it. Finally, we've got CTR. It's parallel, making it modern, fast, and versatile. And look at its error propagation. One error only affects 1 block. So when you're choosing a mode, it's really a balancing act between security, speed, and how you need to handle potential errors.
But of course, the story doesn't end there. For every clever code maker out there, you can bet there's an equally clever code breaker trying to undo their work. And that brings us to our next section, where we're going to meet the villains of our story and talk about their craft, which is called Cryptanalysis. But here's a really cool twist. These villains are actually the good guys. In a way, they're essential. Just listen to this. Cryptanalysis is the engine that drives the improvement of encryption systems. It's so true. Think of them as the ultimate stress testers. Every time a code breaker finds a weakness, it forces the code makers to go back and build something even stronger. They're the reason our security keeps getting better and better.
So you're probably wondering, how do they actually do it? How do they break these codes? Well, in this next section, we're going to open up the Codebreaker's toolkit and take a look at a couple of their most used tricks of the trade.
First up is the classic brute force attack. The analogy here is just perfect. Imagine a thief who has a key ring with every possible key on it. They just stand at a lock and try every single one until it opens. It's not subtle, it's just a numbers game. It might take forever, but if your encryption key is too short, like having a small key ring, this method is pretty much guaranteed to work eventually.
Okay, the second technique is a lot more clever. It's called frequency analysis, and this right here is exactly why that ECB mode we talked about is so terrible. It works just like those puzzle games you see in the newspaper. You know that E is the most common letter in English, right? So you just look for whatever symbol shows up most often in the secret message, and you can take a good guess that it's probably an E. By finding those little statistical patterns, a code breaker can start to piece things together and eventually unravel the whole message.
All right, let's wrap this all up. In our final section, we're calling it the unending duel. This is where we'll boil everything down to the most important things you absolutely need to remember from all of this.
Okay, 3 things. If you remember nothing else, remember these. Number 1, pattern is the enemy. Your goal, always, is to make your encrypted data look like a bunch of random, meaningless static. No patterns at all. Number 2, randomness is your best friend. Those things we mentioned, the IVs and counters, they are just nice-to-haves. They are absolutely critical for real security. And finally, number 3, it's all about trade-offs. And that really brings us to the end. This constant back and forth, this duel between the people making the codes and the people breaking them, it never stops. It's a race that's been going on for centuries. And as our computers get ridiculously powerful and our methods get smarter, the whole game just keeps evolving. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What does the next great code look like? What's the next chapter in this incredible, unending duel? Thanks so much for joining us.